What is going on, everybody? What is going on? The Catch fam, my name is John Dawson, and in today's video, we are hopping into another 2023 fantasy football mock draft. In today's video, we will be going through a 12-team full PPR mock draft. Let's go ahead and take a look at the roster settings. We've got one quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, one tight end, one flex, a kicker and defense spot, and five bench spots. Throughout today's video, I will be giving you guys round by round advice of what I would do to construct a successful roster from the 1.3 for the 2023 fantasy football season. Guys, it's mock draft season. I'm putting out one of these videos every single day. I'm live streaming mock drafts almost every single day of the week. If you guys have mock draft requests, regardless of format, full PPR, half PPR, tight end premium, super flex, 3 wide receivers, 10 teams, 8 teams, 14 teams, whatever it may be, let me know in the comments down below so I can get a video put on the schedule for you and give you guys advice throughout that video. Be sure to subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. This is all we do here all year round. Free fantasy football content all year round, redraft, dynasty, and best ball. We would love to have you as a part of the community. Guys, hit that like button on the way, and whether you guys are new or not, it helps me out a lot. And if you guys have any other comments, questions, or concerns pertaining to the 2023 fantasy football season, let me know down below. I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Without further ado, let's hop into today's mock draft. All right, so I will be honest with you guys. I've ran a ton of mock drafts this offseason. We have been mock drafting literally since the Super Bowl ended, essentially. And I do not like the 1.3. This is a difficult spot to draft from. I really don't like this spot in the first round at all. You know, you can go Christian McCaffrey here. If you believe in Bijan as much as I do, I don't mind going Bijan Robinson here. You can go Cooper Kupp. You can go Tyreek Hill. If you're a little bit worried about the Cooper Kupp injury right now, I don't know. You might not go Cooper Kupp right here, but I don't mind any of those particular players. For the sake of today's mock, let's go with Christian McCaffrey. I have drafted Bijan a ton from the 1.3. And like I said, I don't mind Tyreek Hill there. I don't mind Cooper Kupp there as well. But overall, let's go ahead and start this draft with a hero running back build. We'll just grab C-Mac off the board and we'll move right along. We're going to be able to land some pretty valuable wide receivers at the 2.10 and the 3.3. And for me, when I am drafting for a full PPR format, I'm grabbing 2 wide receivers in the first 3 rounds almost 100% of the time. There's going to be very rare circumstances where I'm going double running back in those first 3 rounds. So there's a couple guys we'll target at the 2.10, 3.3 that I'm a fan of, but we'll kind of hold off to see, who's available at that point. But for me, probably Devonta Smith at the 2.10 is going to be our top target, but there is a possibility that he goes earlier. T. Higgins and Chris Olave are okay in that range, and call me crazy, but we've seen Calvin Ridley go as early as the 2.10, and I don't mind him there as well. And I do think he's a pretty good target for the 3.3. His ADP is a little bit odd right now, with all the offseason hype and the toe injury that was basically a nothing burger. And, there are some fantasy managers who are super high on Calvin Ridley. So you will see him kind of fluctuate throughout mock drafts, at the time that I'm recording this. But nonetheless, there's your first round for you guys. JJ, Jamar Chase, C-Mac, Eckler, Kupp, Barkley, Hill, Bijan, Diggs, Lamb, Kelsey, and AJ Brown. And guys, like I said, I have run a ton of these mock drafts throughout the offseason. Those are the 12 players that are going to go in the first round 90% of the time at the time that I'm recording this. Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown can both sneak into the first round, but a majority of the time, those 12 guys off the board in today's mock are going to be the players that you see off the board in the first round. Of course, that can change. But going in the second round, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams, Nick Chubb gone. That is pretty typical through the 2.4 as well. Those are probably your top rated 16 players. Like I said, at the time I'm recording this, going into the season. So top available players at the moment as Derrick Henry is selected: Jonathan Taylor, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Jacobs, Jalen Waddle, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Tony Pollard, Mark Andrews, Ramondre Stevenson, Chris Olave, Breece Hall, and T. Higgins. So Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, both in very odd circumstances at this point in the offseason, but, they're still going to be ranked where they are. You can go out and play a hypothetical and go ahead and draft one of them, but it just makes and a little bit difficult with them being at the top of the rankings. But I will say, if you're in best ball formats, they are both really good values right now. I talked about this just the other week. Saquon Barkley was a great value, and even earlier in the offseason in best ball, Austin Eckler was a really good value. So if you guys are playing best ball, don't sleep on JT or Josh Jacobs. Right now in redraft, it's kind of hard to determine when to draft them, but at the same time, they could be pretty decent values as we move along to the end of the second round here. So Jalen Waddle's gone. Chris Olave's gone. I love both of those wide receivers in the late second round if they're there. I don't even mind them in the early mid second round as well. So Devonta Smith, my top target here. I'll settle for T. Higgins, but me personally, I'm a bigger fan of Devonta Smith going into the year, and there he goes. It's a good selection there. Like I said, you could reach for Calvin Ridley here. I don't have a problem with that, but there is a possibility that he's available at 3.3. And if you want a piece of that Jaguars offense enough, Christian Kirk will probably be available for us a little bit later. So the one other move we could make here is we could take the first quarterback off the board and Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts, even Josh Allen. But, in my opinion, I'd rather just wait a little bit longer. And like I said, the first 3 rounds in a full PPR format, I want to come out with 2 wide receivers at least. So we'll take T. Higgins here. Prefer Waddle, Olave, or Devonta Smith, but Higgins is still perfectly fine as our first wide receiver off the board. And I'd be really happy to land Calvin Ridley here. If we aren't able to land him, I don't mind DK Metcalf. I know his ceiling's a little bit lower with JSN there, but overall, I still think he's going to have a pretty consistent year. I don't mind Amari Cooper in this range. There goes Calvin Ridley. So like I said, guys, the 1.3 is a tough spot to draft from. It really, truly is. So we'll take Metcalf off of the board. I do think he's the next best option. I get it, guys. Metcalf, for whatever reason, doesn't excite a lot of fantasy managers. Was a wide receiver 16 last year, the wide receiver 14 the year before that, and obviously the wide receiver 7 in his rookie season. So you see a little bit of what you could call, I guess, regression at the end of the day. But I still believe in Metcalf bringing that consistency to the table. When we look at last year, in terms of single-digit fantasy games, he had 6 total through 17 games. So gave you double digits, 11 games out of 17 on the year. Still not bad at all. And, at the end of the day, I talk about this a lot, right? When a new wide receiver enters a wide receiver room, while you could automatically think about that as less targets for a wide receiver like DK Metcalf or even Tyler Lockett, that presence of JSN, as long as all 3 of those guys are healthy, a lot of times could end up helping DK Metcalf because there is now another wide receiver that needs to be accounted for that has a lot of talent. Don't get me wrong, Metcalf's going to get the primary defensive pressure, but there are going to be times throughout the season where defenses are going to be really challenged with Metcalf, JSN, and Tyler Lockett all on the field. Not to mention a little sprinkle of Noah Fant and even Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker with what they bring to the table as well. So Metcalf, okay here. Like I said, the 1.3 is just one of those spots where you're not always going to get the best values falling to you, and you're going to have to kind of draft some players that maybe just don't excite you in terms of upside in comparison to other players unless the right players just fall to you. But nonetheless, we're starting things off here, CMC, Higgins, and Metcalf. And in my opinion, I do think we need to go for a little bit of upside at the 4-11, 5-2, and probably even the 4-10, 5-3, and probably even the 6.10 and 7.3. And I do think with the way this draft has started for us, we are probably going to be going quarterback late. There's probably going to be some pretty good value at quarterback at the 4.10 and 5.3, but I just think we need to go ahead and grab possibly 2 more wide receivers with those 2 selections, get that flex spot filled in, and get another good, reliable wide receiver on the bench as our primary flex backup or even wide receiver 2 backup, because in these full PPR formats, guys, I just value the wide receiver position over everything. So I don't mind having 4 wide receivers off the board in my first 5 picks. That's why we chose Christian McCaffrey in the first round, or, hypothetically, Bijan Robinson in the first round, because we're going hero running back. We're not fully neglecting the running back position, but we're holding off from drafting another running back for quite a few rounds, unless there's just a screaming value there, at the 4.10 or 5.3 that we just can't ignore. So, we'll keep an eye on it. Kenneth Walker is available. I do like him in this range, but he's probably going to be selected before we draft again. I do like Aaron Jones, who just went off the board. I don't mind Miles Sanders. I like DeAndre Swift a lot. But regardless, we're probably going to be targeting, Rashad White, Isaiah Pacheco, David Montgomery, James Cook, Antonio Gibson, those types of running backs behind Christian McCaffrey. And then, potentially some late round guys like Brian Robinson, Damian Harris, Devon A. Chain, Jerick McKinnon as we move along towards the end of our draft. Right now, getting 2 more stud wide receivers feels more valuable to this roster than anything because I do like Higgins, I do like Metcalf, but I don't think that their ceiling is incredibly massive. I do think that their upside is a little bit capped at the end of the day. So for me, DJ Moore, a wide receiver that if you guys have been watching my live mock drafts, my regular upload mock drafts, whatever it may be, I draft a lot of DJ Moore. So I love him in this range. I also like Christian Watson, and I think both of those guys do bring a little bit of upside to the table. I like Brandon Ayuk in this range. Drake London just went off the board. I like Drake London a lot as well. Christian Kirk is a player that I'm not afraid to draft against his ADP. I will reach for Christian Kirk all day long. I do think we could probably still land him at the 5.3, so no need to necessarily draft him here in the 4th. And there goes DJ Moore. So I'll take Christian Watson here. Still a player that is bringing that upside to the table. A great flex option, in my opinion, going in to the year. I do like Romeo Doubs late. So, that is one thing to consider in these earlier rounds. If there's a player on the same offense at the same position that you like later in your drafts, maybe you don't want to overexpose yourself, but Romeo Doubs is a player I really like in that 10th, 11th, 12th round range. But for the purpose of today's mock, we're going to go ahead and take Christian Watson off of the board. And moving into the 5.3, here we are. There's, Justin Fields is sitting here. I don't mind that pick at all. Dameon Pierce would not be a bad RB2, as would Miles Sanders. But Brandon Ayuk, Hollywood Brown, Christian Kirk, these are the wide receivers that I like right here as our wide receiver 4, our kind of bench wide receiver, potential wide receiver 2. DeAndre Hopkins, Chris Godwin. There's a lot of really good names, but like I said, Christian Kirk is just a wide receiver, especially if I miss out on Calvin Ridley, that I want pieces of, because I think this Jaguars offense is going to take a great step forward in Trevor Lawrence's junior year, and you could really call it his sophomore year with how incredibly bad the coaching staff, Urban Meyer, everything was in his rookie season. And Christian Kirk, at the end of the day, when we look at what he did last year, this was your wide receiver 11 in full PPR. And I just think he's a steal in this range. Listen, we just talked about, what can happen for wide receivers when another wide receiver enters the room. It's easy to say, oh, they're just going to lose their targets and they're not going to be as valuable. But I think when we look at how this offense is going to be ran, Calvin Ridley will be taking the top off of defenses, playing as that primary wide receiver 1, taking a lot of the aggressive defensive pressure. Well, Christian Kirk, who lined up in the slot more than almost any other wide receiver last year, is going to line up in the slot. It's not going to hurt Christian Kirk that much. He's going to act as a security blanket for Trevor Lawrence in full PPR leagues. I love Christian Kirk, especially as a wide receiver for a flex option for us. If something happens to Higgins or Metcalf, he can be moved up into those primary wide receiver spots. So, like I said, I'm not afraid to reach for Christian Kirk, but let's also talk about Brandon Ayuk, who went one spot after Christian Kirk. This was your wide receiver 15 last year, going into his 4th year in the league, coming off of his best season, 78 receptions off 114 targets, just over 1,000 receiving yards and 8 receiving touchdowns. I know Debo was a bit banged up last year, but even with Debo out there, once again, I think that helps Brandon Ayuk. I think he could easily, you could call last year his breakout season, but I think he's only going to improve on it this year. I love him in this same range. And once again, you look at those two players, Brandon Ayuk and Christian Kirk in the 5th. So your wide receivers 15 and wide receiver 11 last year in fantasy football. They are tremendous values overall. Target those guys in the 5th round. And not to mention, I really like Hollywood Brown in that same range. So moving into the 6th round, let's kind of refocus here of what we're going to be doing. My primary target, hands down, is Rashad White, who just went off the board. This is why I love running these mock drafts for you guys with my community, with members of my Discord, who mock with, me on a regular basis and mock with a ton of people on a regular basis, because these mock drafts are just so much more competitive. You're not just going to be able to look at ADP and just select players based off of it. These are true representations of how fantasy managers, competitive fantasy managers, feel about players right now. And you're going to leave your draft maybe feeling a little bit queasy, but that is how it should be. It's going to make you so much more prepared for when your real draft comes. So if you guys are not part of our free Discord, that link is in the description down below. Guys, there are tons of mock drafts being ran on there every single day, and we would love for you guys to come out and mock draft with us as well. And like I said, you just don't walk out of these mock drafts feeling as good as if run one on Sleeper with a computer or just a couple of your friends, or you hop on Yahoo or ESPN and people are leaving, halfway through the draft, or whatever it may be. Plus, I do believe that Sleeper has the best, most updated ADP overall. So, getting back to my point here, we were going to target Rachaad White. He is out of the picture. So for me, I actually like David Montgomery quite a bit. Alexander Madison just went off the board. So for me, probably Montgomery and then Pacheco are my top targets. I don't mind James Conner whatsoever in this range as well. But I think Montgomery is going to have a really good year. I like him as an RB2 quite a bit. I love James Conner right there as well. Don't get me wrong. And then I really like Isaiah Pacheco in this range. So if either of those guys fall out to us at the 7.3, happy to take either of them. We can take a breather at wide receiver. There are some good options. Michael Pittman, Mike Evans, JSN, Jordan Addison. I love Jahan Dotson in this range. Zay Flowers is still available. He probably won't fall to us at the 8.10, but I will tell you guys right now, if he does, I'll take Zay Flowers at 8.10 all day long. He is a player who is just rising aggressively in ADP at the end of the day. So moving into the 7th round, I will still say my primary target right here is another running back. We just listed the guys we like, so we'll just kind of see who falls. There is a chance that neither of those primary targets and James Conner or Isaiah Pacheco do fall to us. And now it looks like one of them is going to fall to us. So that's going to be our selection, which sets us up with a pretty nice starting roster. So let's take James Conner off the board here. Perfectly happy with him as our RB3. Now when we're looking at things, Christian McCaffrey as our RB1, David Montgomery as our RB2, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf as our wide receivers 1 and 2, Christian Watson in the flex, Christian Kirk, and James Conner on the bench. So overall, we are sitting in pretty good fashion, in my opinion, in terms of our skill position players. And, this hero running back method is really one of my primary methods when I am, looking at my roster construction at this point in the off season. The other route I would go is just aggressive, heavy wide receiver through the first 4 rounds and then just kind of go zero running back. Outside of that, I don't mind what I call a bounce back method, where you're either starting in the first round with a wide receiver or running back, then you're drafting the opposite position, wide receiver, running back, and then just letting a good quarterback and tight end fall to you. And when you're not drafting a quarterback or tight end, you're just continuing to select wide receivers and running backs back to back. That is how I constructed a lot of my rosters last year, and I had a lot of success with that because you end up with a very kind of even par roster. Nothing is jumping off of the page, but going into the year, you're just well built. You have good depth, and then throughout trades and the waiver wire, you're able to manage a pretty good roster throughout the year. But this year, I've been going for a little bit more upside in my draft. So let's see what we end up with as we are wrapping up the 7th round and moving into the 8th. So Zay Flowers, guys, I'm telling you, if you want a piece of Zay Flowers, you need to reach against ADP for him right now. The last couple mocks I've ran, he was moving up from the 9th to the 8th. I know he got picked at the end of the 7th, the 7th.11, but nonetheless still winning the 7th tonight. And he is just moving aggressively in ADP. There are a lot of fantasy managers that really believe he will be the wide receiver 1 when we look at that Ravens offense and garner the most targets and probably the most receptions overall on that offense. Maybe outside, Mark Andrews is still there, but in terms of the wide receiver position. So nonetheless, moving into the 8.10, okay, looking at the top available quarterbacks, Dak Prescott and Tua, I don't mind either of them. Looking at the top available running backs, A.J. Dillon, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, Jamal Williams, and Rashad Penny. I like targeting either of the Commanders' running backs at this point in my draft as my fourth and potentially final running back off of the board. Top available wide receivers, Burks, Kadarius Toney, Michael Thomas, Juju, and Gabe Davis. I actually like Cortland Sutton in this range. Call me crazy. I also really like Sky Moore, another player whose ADP is all over the place. Top available tight ends, Evan Ingram, Pat Fryermuth, David Njoku, Dalton Schultz, Cole Kmet. For me, personally, this year, if Fryermuth doesn't fall to me, who I really, really like, if Evan Ingram doesn't fall to me, who I also really like, for the most part, I'm just punting tight end. If I don't get Kelsey at a good value, if I don't get Mark Andrews at a good value, I'm really just punting tight end because when you look at the point differential between, like the top 7 tight ends and then everyone after that, it's pretty close overall. So for me, I just don't stress about it. And I'm not going to really stress about it in today's mock. So for me, let's get our final running back here and Brian Robinson. If we get the right value on Devon A. Chain, Damian Harris, Jerick McKinnon, even Eli Mitchell or Tyler Algier, and there's some rookies I like at the end of the draft. But for the most part, and a lot of these redraft one flex formats, I'm just drafting for running backs. It is full PPR. I want wide receiver depth on my bench more than anything. Okay. So moving into the 9.3, this pick might surprise you guys a little bit, but for me, I actually like Sky Moore right here if he's available. And he's another player similar to Zay Flowers, who we just talked about, who's aggressively moving up in ADP. I mean, just a couple weeks ago, he was still going in the 13th round, into the 12th round at times. And now you literally have to take him sometimes at the end of the 8th round. I mean, seriously, I've seen him go that early. I mean, obviously connected to the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, but when we look at the way this wide receiver room is shaping out, Sky Moore, as long as he can stay healthy, is really getting the looks as the top target in terms of the slot wide receiver on this team. With Kadarius Toney out, there's less targets to go around, and I really think when you look at the way this offense was ran last year, yeah, it's never super consistent at the wide receiver position, but an injured Kadarius Toney, MVS, who has some trust with Patrick Mahomes, but not super versatile at the end of the day. Justin Ross has made some waves. Then you got Rashee Rice. There are definitely some guys. Richie James is there as well. Travis Kelsey is going to get his, but I just think when we're looking at consistency, Sky Moore has the best potential to be the most consistent wide receiver on this roster. And like I said, guys, if you want a piece of him, you're going to have to go out and draft him against his ADP. The 9th round on average is where I am seeing Sky Moore go off of the board most commonly. So that is who we're going to take here at the 9.3. And as we move into the 10th and 11th round, we're sitting pretty good here. 4 running backs, 2 wide receivers on the bench, but no quarterback, no tight end. So for me, there's kind of 2 routes we can go here. We're probably going to go quarterback and tight end with these next 2 selections, unless there's just a player sitting there that is far too good of value overall. So the top targets that I am looking at now that Cole Kmet is gone, Dalton Schultz, Dalton Kincaid, but most importantly, Greg Dulcich. If you just completely punt tight end, I am okay with coming out of your draft with just Greg Dulcich. But if you want to draft 2 guys, I'm okay with that as well. On the kind of flip side here, looking at quarterback, I don't mind drafting 2 quarterbacks because we're kind of at the end here. I like Tua, but maybe you're a little bit queasy about the concussions and you want a second quarterback behind him. You could put a Geno Smith there, Daniel Jones, maybe even Kyler Murray, Anthony Richardson. There are a lot of different combinations when you're in this kind of anchor quarterback tier, late round quarterback tier, however you want to call it. One strategy is drafting 2 quarterbacks in this range that kind of gets you an average of like 18 to 20 fantasy points per week and just kind of rotating those guys against the poorer defenses. But, especially with Dalton Kincaid off the board here, even though the 2 teams in front of me both have a tight end, they also both have a quarterback. I just don't want to risk anything. I really like Greg Dulcich as the best available tight end. We're going to take him off the board as long as he doesn't get selected here at the 10.9. If he does, then we'll just go with Dalton Schultz. But he does not, so let's get Greg Dulcich. I was really, truly hoping to land Cole Kmet in this round. He is really my favorite tight end in this kind of late round range. But nonetheless, I'm okay with Greg Dulcich. I think he's going to have a pretty good year overall. All right, so for me, I don't want to pass on Tua if he's here. He's my favorite late round quarterback. I really like Geno Smith as well, but I think Tua has the most upside. If you're worried about Tua, I get it. I totally get it. And we're still going to have an opportunity to draft a second quarterback at 12.10 if we want. And when you look at the amount of great waiver wire quarterbacks that were out there last year, Justin Fields in a lot of leagues, Trevor Lawrence in a lot of leagues, Jared Goff, Daniel Jones, even Kirk Cousins at times. If you really needed to go Derek Carr, he was there at times as well. So there were enough options that I don't really completely panic at the quarterback position if I go late round quarterback. Now, I will tell you guys, I'm not always going late round quarterback. I do think there's a lot of truth going into this season. When you look at the point differential between the top quarterbacks and everyone else last year, there's a lot of truth to grabbing one of those top tier quarterbacks, even if you're going Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, or Justin Herbert. So don't get me wrong, I'm not always doing this, but it is definitely, I think, still an option when you look at the way a lot of those waiver wire and late round quarterbacks ended up working out last year. Nonetheless, moving into the 12.10, we're either going to go with the best available wide receiver, another quarterback. You could even go with another tight end at this point. There's really no running backs. Maybe Tank Bigsby, Jerome Ford. Like, there are some handcuff committee guys that are not too bad in this range, but I prefer to kind of take one more wide receiver off the board, or we could anchor our tight end or quarterback position. Nonetheless, Rashid Shaheed goes at the 11.4. He is a late round target in this range that I'm grabbing all day long. A huge fan of Rashid Shaheed in this range, but he's definitely gone. And Rashid is another player whose ADP kind of all over the place. Sometimes you can get him the 11th, sometimes the 12th, sometimes even the 13th. But if you really want a piece of him, I would definitely recommend drafting him against his current ADP. He has definitely become a late round kind of popular name in the fantasy community. So, to wrap up this draft, I do think we'll go ahead and take one more quarterback. Maybe try and get the most stable guy available, Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers. I still like Daniel Jones and Jared Goff in this range. And, I do like Kyler Murray a lot in this range, but I kind of like him behind, I don't know, maybe a Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, even an early round quarterback, even a top tier guy like Patrick Mahomes, because he is coming off of a major injury. But all signs are kind of pointing towards the possibility of him being back sooner rather than later. And at the end of the day, before Kyler was hurt last year, he was a top 7 quarterback in fantasy and was really playing completely fine. It just, his year got kind of overshadowed by the injuries and just the fact that the Cardinals looked like a complete dumpster fire at the end of the day. So, like I said, we'll target one more quarterback here, and then we will draft a kicker and defense and call it a day. So, like I said at the beginning of the video, guys, if you have any mock draft requests, regardless of formats, this is what I do every August. As long as you guys are subscribed to the channel, I am more than happy to run a mock draft for you and give you guys round by round roster construction advice. So just let me know your format and what you guys are looking for. 12 teams, 10 teams, full PPR, however many wide receivers, flexes, whatever it may be, and I will get that on my schedule. So let's pick Daniel Jones today. I don't know. Cousins is there, Rodgers is there, Goff, Russell Wilson, Kyler. There are some names there. Let's take Danny Dimes. In terms of kickers and defenses, I'm not going to, break things down extensively, but just so you guys are aware, we are one of the few fantasy channels that does care about kickers and defenses throughout the year. My co-host Steven does run a must-start kicker, must-start defense video every single week throughout the season. So I'll give you guys a little bit of a breakdown, and then we'll kind of take one last look at the roster and wrap up the video. Let's just take the Cowboys here. I don't mind the Patriots in this range either. They were your defense number 1 last year, and we're always going to tell you, don't draft a defense or kicker over any skill position players. So if you're waiting towards the end of the draft, the Patriots are the 3rd defense off the board tonight, but a lot of the times a lot of fantasy managers are just sleeping on them for whatever reason, and they're sitting there as a later round pick. So truly, guys, don't panic about defenses or kickers. You can stream either position throughout the year. In terms of some good sleepers, the Jets should be available. They were your defense 11 last year. They should improve upon last year. The Seattle Seahawks defense, Your defense number 8 last year, and they only got better through the draft. They could have a great young corner duo going there, and I really like them towards the end of drafts. The Jacksonville Jaguars, your defense number 6 last year. Sometimes they don't even get drafted. They gave you double digits last year, basically through the entire fantasy playoffs. They looked fantastic. 12 or more points weeks 14 through 18. They are going to be a defense that's going to be a steal and a streamable option for sure. So there's a couple names I like towards the end of the draft in terms of defenses. In terms of kickers, do not panic at kicker, please. Don't go out and draft Justin Tucker, Daniel Carlson over a skill position player, please. And if you guys play in a keeper league, a little bit of advice. You don't even have to draft a kicker or defense. Draft 2 random rookies, maybe not random, but rookies you believe in at the end of your draft. Forfeit your kicker and defense and just stream them that way. Last year, for example, I drafted Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson over a kicker and defense in my keeper league. Now I have Christian Watson, who went tonight in the 4th round as my keeper in the very last round of that fantasy draft. So, if you play in a keeper league, don't even worry about kickers and defenses. Go out and draft 2 rookies or whoever it may be, 2 end-around value guys that you can grab. But looking at kickers who are available towards the end of this draft, Jason Myers, Seahawks kicker number 4 last year. Matt Gay, who's now with the Colts, a top 15 kicker. The Colts are going to be awful, but hey, that's good for fantasy kickers because they're going to score less touchdowns. They're going to be forced to kick more field goals. Graham Gano of the Giants, kicker number 8 last year. Nick Folk of the Patriots, kicker number 9 last year. There are definitely options towards the end of your draft. Do not worry about the kicker position whatsoever. As much as, we do care about it here at the channel, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. Don't go out and think you have to draft Justin Tucker super early or Daniel Carlson super early. And same with defense. Every single year, there are defenses you can stream in fantasy. All right, let's finish things up here. Here's one last look at the team. We've got Christian McCaffrey, David Montgomery, James Conner, and Brian Robinson at running back. T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Christian Watson, Christian Kirk, and Sky Moore at wide receiver. Greg Dulcich at tight end, a late round tight end build, and then Tua time with Danny Dimes at quarterback. Traditionally, I don't really draft 2 quarterbacks, but if you have injury concerns with one of your quarterbacks, go ahead and draft a second one. You can always drop that second quarterback. And if you need another one throughout the season or later down the stretch for your bye week, someone will be there on the waiver wire. We got the Cowboys defense and Graham Gano. So our starting roster would be Tua or Daniel Jones, I guess depending on the weaker defense or how things are looking for their offenses. Greg Dulcich at tight end, and I do believe that Greg Dulcich has the ability to have a breakout season. Sean Payton loves the tight end position. If you look at the tight ends he's coached throughout his career, he's had a lot of success with tight ends, and Greg Dulcich showed enough flashes in his rookie season with this offense, hopefully, presumably, improving under Sean Payton. He's going to be just fine. Like I said, I prefer Cole Kmet in that range, but it is what it is. All right. We'd be starting Christian McCaffrey and David Montgomery. Montgomery is going to be a touchdown vulture this year, as much as I like Jahmyr Gibbs. We'd be starting Higgins, Metcalf, Watson. And then on our bench, we have Christian Kirk, James Conner, Brian Robinson, and Sky Moore to pull from. So at the end of the day, 2 very good wide receivers to pull from on our bench that can be moved up to our primary wide receiver spots and that additional flex spot, and 2 running backs you can kind of anchor in at the RB2 spot if necessary. And God forbid Christian McCaffrey gets hurt, then we still have some depth to pull from. Overall, I think this is a pretty decent draft. Not my favorite, but I told you guys I don't like the 1.3. It's been a difficult spot to draft from so far throughout this off season. All things considered, I think we turned out pretty okay for kind of a hero running back build, late round quarterback, and late round tight end build. I think we're sitting okay. So let me know in the comments down below what you thought of today's mock. If you hate it, well, hey, we have got like literally dozens of mock drafts on the channel, whether they are live streams or uploads like this one. We are getting a ton of these mock drafts out for you guys. So check them out and then let me know what you thought of today's mock draft overall. Hopefully you guys found something helpful in today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. And please let me know once again any mock drafts that you guys need, any mock draft requests that you guys have. I will get put on my schedule for you. I'd love to help you guys out heading into the 2023 fantasy football season. Guys, hit the like button on the way out. Check out our links down below. Follow us on Instagram, join our free Discord, all that good stuff. Really appreciate you guys checking out today's video. Like I said, I hope it was helpful for you. That will wrap things up for today's video. With that, I will say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch.